coming on. I've got 6:56. But he said he was coming on his phone.
Okay.
Joseph here, am I
Yep.
evident?
You're
Yeah,
on.
we see you.
Okay.
All right.
Hello, I think Dwayne's giving me good competition on the background, though.
That's just my normal background.
I know. Mine's a real place, but a fake location.
Is that actually the sky, Bob?
Yes, that's the view up of Friend's Place in Telluride. But it's a hell of a lot better than my office.
Yep.
Okay, so we're waiting for Hal to show up. And we have Lee as well, so that's enough people. Okay.
Hopefully we're doing something besides Aroma Joe's then.
That's the only thing that we've got.
And I don't count.
Yes, you don't count for that.
We have quorum without you.
We have a quorum. Yep. Okay, so let me go in. Where? It's okay. I will call the December 10th, 2020 Town of Northwood Planning Board to order at 7:04 p.m. due to circumstances associated with the coronavirus pandemic and pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, which declared New Hampshire to be in a state of emergency due to novel coronavirus COVID-19. An emergency exists as defined by RSA 91-A:2, paragraph 3 for the December 10th, 2020 Town of Northwood Planning Board meeting. Board members who are unable to attend in person may participate via electronic communication and will be deemed to be present at the meeting for purposes of quorum and voting. All planning board members present in the meeting can attest their presence by roll call. Or, no, we can't do that yet.
Jeffrey.
Okay,
Al Kreider.
Lee Baldwin.
Dwayne Curry.
Bob Strobel, chair. Okay, get rid of that. And for purposes of general voting, this will be all members present, including Mr. Curry, alternate. First up is a continued case 19-12. So I believe Ms. Baldwin has recused herself
Yes.
for this, and she can put herself on mute for this until we open up public comment if we do tonight. So we have Mr. Sullivan and Mr. Allard as representatives of the applicant. And I believe you wanted to apprise us of updates. Is that correct?
Well, I think that we had requested a continuance
Okay.
and the matter.
Mr. Sullivan, you muted yourself.
I'm sorry, something dropped out there. Just as
It's coming back.
He accidentally hit mute. It's okay.
Oh, okay.
So we have asked for another continuance. We are awaiting final decisions by the New Hampshire Department of Transportation regarding improvements to the Route 4 Bow Lake Road intersection and Route 4 also. So I can answer any questions you'd like if you have any.
I think that covers it for me. If they're still working on the design, then we'll wait to hear from that.
So I had suggested I think a little bit more of a status update, and I guess my main question is If you're waiting on designs with them, I think you had indicated you expect those things to be resolved by early January. So, my one question would be which meeting would be best in conjunction with that timeline. And then my other question is if you're working on redesigns with them, whether it's the radius of the curve at the intersection or things like that. I think previously from a path to a decision on this application, we had been looking at discussing everything except the sidewalk that needs to be moved to along the road frontage of Bow Lake Road after that waiver was denied. Are you anticipating that now your next submission is going to be like one more submission that includes the new location of that sidewalk and includes all DOT design aspects? Is all of that going to be resolved in what you come back with after the District 6 process is resolved?
I would hope so. Obviously, District 6 is, working under conditions that we're all working under now.
Yep.
I can tell you that next week, I anticipate that we will have some plans to provide back with approval from the DOT. And that would include the improvements that you would have on Bow Lake Road, improvements to the intersection, and improvements to Route 4 itself.
Can I ask a question?
Sure. Go ahead, Joe.
Really for James. So James, what remind me, had we some understanding going with the applicant or among ourselves and the applicant regarding a sidewalk along Bow Lake Road?
So our code requires sidewalk along the entire property frontage, which, since this is a corner lot, we interpreted as the frontage of Route 4 that already has sidewalk, as well as a public sidewalk along Bow Lake Road, along the entire frontage of the property. The applicant had requested a waiver to, instead of providing that sidewalk at the street, provide an interior walkway that would serve the business, but that wouldn't serve as a public sidewalk. The public wouldn't have the right to, cross and recross just because they're walking down the street. They would only be able to use it to serve the business. And the board denied that waiver. So what we had previously discussed, I think it was back in February, March, when we were looking at a timeline to completion, was we had discussed the board considering all other aspects of the application and essentially reaching a decision that the design as it stood was otherwise approvable pending a redesign of that sidewalk. But I think from my perspective, if the road is going to be redesigned, if things along that frontage are being redesigned anyway, I would prefer to see with that next resubmittal that sidewalk also redesigned, so we theoretically have the final iteration of the plan that the board can act on at that time. Does that make sense, Joe?
Yeah, it does. I mean, that reminds me, I do remember, believe it or not, I do remember that discussion a bit, that we went around on it a few times. And so the applicant is of the understanding that they are satisfying some dimension of what James just described. Would that be true, I guess, Mr. Sullivan?
Yes, the plan that we have and that we've turned into the New Hampshire DOT incorporates a sidewalk along the entire frontage of the road along Bow Lake Road. And it's already been incorporated in that plan. And the plan that we're going to be providing, hopefully maybe even as soon as next week or the week after, which is in the final stages at New Hampshire DOT, would include improvements on Route 4 itself.
Okay. All right. Thanks for the refresher there.
Good to know. Okay, anything else from the board or staff?
Mr. Chair, I would suggest also, since we received a letter from Attorney Manzelli regarding this case, and since she's present tonight, if the board has questions or wants clarification from her about that letter that she submitted, we could open and close public comment.
Good point. Okay, we did receive a letter from Attorney Manzelli, and we received a response from the applicant on that. At this point, I'll open public comment on this case. If you would like to speak, please get my attention somehow by raising your hand or speaking, something to that effect. Okay, Attorney Manzelli.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Nice to see everyone again in this new format. I'll keep this brief. Reading the tea leaves from the brief commentary of the board so far, it does not seem that the board is willing to take action tonight. The severances do feel like action on this application is well overdue at that time. I explained that in my letter to you. Attorney Allard's letter implied that, there's like zero impact to the severances of any additional time, and that's not true. There is additional legal fees and emotional and time cost, and the uncertainty of dealing with this is really taking a toll on them. Having said that, I would urge the board to continue along in the vein that it's been discussing tonight, that if Mr. Sullivan is going to be allowed to make a further submission, that it be the final submission. Having had 14 times before this board, it should be abundantly clear what the board is looking for revisions to the plan. So it would be, I agree with some of the sentiments expressed tonight. It would be fantastic if the next submission was the final submission. And with respect to a final submission, I would like to respectfully request that the board send that to its peer review engineers. It seems like there are some changes that are pretty substantial. Otherwise, they would have been done a lot sooner than this. And I would like to respectfully request that there be adequate time for the severances to have their traffic engineer review and consider the plans. And I would like to request that the board consider the upcoming holidays and the ongoing pandemic when deciding what is a sufficient amount of time. I used to would have said maybe 2 weeks. I think, today I would say something like 4 weeks, maybe even 6 weeks, depending on the finality of the submission that comes in and the timing of when it comes in. Something like December 22nd is a little different than January 3rd. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay. I'll call on one person. Mr. Bobby Graves is in the meeting. I'm not sure of your relationship to this case, but if you would like to speak, you would need to either turn on your microphone or turn off, unmute yourself. But you do not need to if you don't want to speak. And I'll take that as a no. Okay. Seeing as there's no one else who is interested in speaking, I will close public comment for this meeting, subject to reopening at the next time this case is heard. Okay. That being said, we have a request for a continuance from the applicant, and I would entertain a motion with a discussion of date.
So moved. Joseph here.
Okay. We have a second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. McCaffrey, second by Mr. Curry. We need to continue to a date and time certain, and the applicant has asserted that he most likely is to hear from DOT next week. Ms. Manzelli, Attorney Manzelli, has requested enough time to review it. Um, what I'm thinking offhand, this is just me, is to schedule for, let me pull up my calendar here.
January meetings would be Thursday
Yes.
the 14th or Thursday the 28th.
Is there a preference from the applicant?
Either one would be okay.
Thank you. Good question, Joe. Um, well, I guess my preference would be, well, I don't really have a preference, to be honest. Either way it's going to be, if DOT comes through, and which I will not bet my last breath on, but you never know. Something they have before, they haven't before. We'll wait and see.
Bob, can I just insert? Isn't
Yeah,
the
go ahead.
holiday issue here? Obviously, that slows things up, as we all know from previous experience. But and your reservations there? The likelihood. I mean, we could guess at the earlier one, but the latter one is allowing almost.
Well, yeah, it's almost a month, and it is over a month. If DOT comes through, and there would be a month of review. What I'm hedging about is if we took a look at it and decided we want to call in an engineer for review or something to that effect, or bring in outside consultants for review, if we wait till January 28th, then we need to make that decision. That's at least another meeting. If we continue to January 14th and DOT does not come through and they wait, and we don't get the drawings until January, let's say January, that's not an awful lot of time for us to review it. So it's one of those, excuse the things, you're darned if you do and you're darned if you don't. So I won't, being chair, I don't make motions. I will let somebody else decide on a date.
So I think the other things that we have for January, we already know that there is a new case that should have been noticed for the 17th, but staff had a bit of a mix-up in terms of getting it in. So we have noticed that new business for the 14th. So we have one case scheduled to begin its public hearing that night already. We have the zoning amendment scheduled for a first public hearing next week. But if there is going to be a second public hearing, that would also be the 14th. As far as working with DOT, next week is the last week without a holiday in it. So yeah, they've got a full week of work next week, theoretically, but if it's not done then, I don't know.
Yeah.
How much people would be working the week of Christmas, the week of New Year's. So
in my experience, most of the key design staff has time off, but that's been a good many years. So things might have changed since my relationship with DOT has changed.
And my understanding from conversations with Mr. Frankowitz and Mr. Sullivan is that this isn't just something that's entirely within District 6's purview. It's something that they're having to go back and forth with the main office in Concord about on some items.
Yeah,
Well,
I add something to this.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So it is my understanding from District 6 that this has been through Concord and is now back in District 6. And the last piece of this is just a some minor adjustments
Okay.
at the District 6 level. So I know that District 6 this week had told me that they would make that minor adjustment and hopefully have something to me this week or next week.
Okay.
Bob, if I could add a comment, please.
Sure, go ahead.
Just another thing to bear in mind. The Budget Committee typically would hold their public hearings on the proposed 2021 budgets on the 13th and 14th. So Betty may have a conflict that night if she plans to attend Budget Committee rather than Planning Board, or if members of the Planning Board wanted to participate in the public hearing. It hasn't been cast in stone yet, but that's how they've typically gone. This came up, the date hadn't been set, and I realized that, I know last year we bumped our Planning Board meeting to the 3rd and 4th.
Yes.
I think at this point, we've already committed to the one
Yes.
case. So I think we're going to need to have a meeting on the 14th, but I just don't know.
Yeah.
How much you want to keep adding to it.
Well, that's what I'm thinking is typically January business sections and applications are fairly light. So I'm, based on the public hearing and the new application, I'm sort of leaning toward the 28th myself, but I didn't make the motion. Either the motion or the second, Joe, or
Well, I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that we hold it, that we hear this then again on the 28th. It seems like there's a fair enough reason to do so. I may, perhaps the applicant wanted it a little sooner, as it might occur sooner as in terms of the information coming back from DOT, but I may have just intimated that. I mean, it may not be an issue there, but I also, we're faced with, if we don't have it, we're going to have to look at it the next meeting anyway. In other words, if everything doesn't come in, so.
Dwayne, do you concur? Well, since you made the second.
I second it and I concur. I think they need that amount of time so that Ms. Mazzelli and the other folks have time to look at it as well. They already mentioned that. So the 28th sounds to me like the right date.
Okay, sounds good. We'll take
Yeah, I
Mr.
think
Sullivan
that
at his word that he would accept either. So
yeah, I think that makes added sense, just that everybody gets a chance to look at whatever comes in. Yeah.
Okay, so to restate, the application or motion is to continue applicant or case number 19-12 to January 28th meeting. Discussion on the motion. Hearing none. Susan will do a roll call vote, please.
Hal,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Dwayne,
Yes.
and Bob.
Yes. Okay. And just, Mr. Sullivan, I'm sure you will, and Mr. Allard, I'm sure you will get us information as soon as you get it. And we can distribute it out to members of the board and put it in the file for members of the public, which will give Ms. Mazzelli access.
Perfect, will do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all. Happy holidays.
Likewise.
Hey, Bob, just a reminder, when we send out the information, can we make sure it's all in the electronic format so that we can keep it on our computers, please?
If Mr. Sullivan gets it that way, I'm sure we can do so.
I will note that and try to make that happen. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if it's coming from Mr. Frankowitz and stuff, he's pretty good about it. That's
He's
really
been sending us PDFs
right
throughout.
It just stays on the paper a little bit too.
Yep. Well, especially to
Sorry.
review it over the holidays. if DOT comes through, like I hope they do, and I'm sure that Mr. Sullivan hopes they do as well, it'll be a lot easier to distribute and review electronic copies than it is to try to get paper copies.
It's
at town hall or something.
currently in that format now.
Okay.
So we'll
Lovely.
make sure and get that over like that. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Bob,
Okay.
if I may,
Go ahead. Sure.
just a request for myself, and it doesn't have to be a large format, but 8.5 by 11, I realize that, but in this case, it's not that large a site, but an 8.5 by 11 printout of it, could it be sent to me if that comes in?
Yeah, staff
that-
can take care of that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Susan can take care of that.
Thank
Okay,
you.
sure, thank you. And I think Mr. I was about to say Tim Frankowitz. That's not right. Tim Sorry, it's been a long day. Tim Jandeber would appreciate a hard copy. I think he's has a standing request for hard copies, which staff can do as well. Okay. Thank you both, or all. We are on
Thank you.
internal business then.
So I believe the last time we were together, we had expressed the intent of noticing the public hearing for the zoning amendments for tonight. Due to the Thanksgiving holiday, we weren't able to meet the legal notice for that. So we noticed for next week, the 17th. So that will be our first public hearing on the proposed zoning amendment to the Wetlands Conservation Overlay District.
Which is fine. You know, the idea is to have it sooner than later, so we're not under the gun to have 2 public hearings on them in January. So we'll have that next week.
We did send that to and get it back from town legal counsel. They had a small comment on the ballot language, but nothing on the amendment itself.
Okay, that's good to know. And I'm trying to think of what else we have. I think that's about it. Unless
I'm
anybody
liking the
has.
sound of that.
Sorry? You're
I'm
liking
liking the sound of that.
Well,
You
It's
and me
not a-
both.
yep, I have no problems. I have no problems getting adjourning about 7:30. So plenty enough for me and to do tonight. So if nobody has anything else, I will take a final motion for the evening.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, we have a second.
Second.
Whoever.
Okay, I would like to append, have a happy well, we're going to see you next week. Never mind.
Next week.
I'll wait for that time.
Happy
Okay.
first night of Hanukkah to
Yes.
those who celebrate.
Yes, good point.
Have one.
Yes, we
Have
will.
one in any
We
case.
will miss that.
Yes.
next. Okay. Anyone disagree with adjourning at 7:30?
Yeah.
Okay, I will take that as assent, and we'll skip the roll call vote since it's all in assent. We are adjourned at 7:30. Thank you all. Have a good night.